Gunther and Ben, ESPN 700. Kyle Gunther, Ben Anderson, 305. Happy Tuesday.
Utah's 2019 football schedule sets up very nice for them. We've been talking a lot about where the Utes are ranked in the preseason. CBS Sports and Dennis Dodd yesterday put out their post-spring top 25. He had the Utes at 12. The only other Pac-12 team ahead of them was the Ducks at 10. The USA Today put out their way too early preseason top 25. Today, they do not have the Utes in the top 25.
Do they have anyone in the South? Because yesterday, today,
check.
Dennis Dodd did not have anybody in the South other than the University of Utah.
No, I see Oregon. I see Washington again in the USA Today. I see Stanford. I do not see the Utes, and I have triple checked because I thought that I may have missed something. He said they dropped Southern Cal out, and I think there's a lot of talk about not only how good Utah is going to be this year, but how bad USC is going to be, and it's not getting better anytime soon. But let's just get to the on-the-field stuff, because it's pretty clear now Utah may have 10 guys drafted this year in the 2020 draft, but the 2019 season, if you will. Sorry, my dates are getting a little off now, but the Utes are going to have Jalen Johnson drafted in the first round. Zach Moss is going to go in the second round. Manny Bowen's going to be, well, hell, if Cody Barton was a third-round pick, Manny Bowen's a second-round pick. Lecky Fotu could be a second-round pick. Bradley and I could be a second-round pick. There's a lot of really good talent on this team. I think Utah wins at Lavelle Edwards to start that season. I think Utah beats NIU at home much more handily than they did a year ago on the road, which we told you last year is the dumbest game we've ever seen. Why would you go to a place like Northern Illinois? You got to fly into Chicago.
They got two players drafted, by the way. Northern Illinois did. Sutton Smith got drafted by the Steelers, and I think they ended up having one of their tackles get drafted as well.
Sutton, you're right. Their tackle was very good. Their left tackle was like a JUCO All-American or whatever, the young fellow. What is it, Conference USA, whatever, MAC, whatever that is. But NIU's a tough team, and you don't recruit in Chicago. You don't recruit in the Midwest. Why would you go there? What on earth were you doing there? At least you get NIU at home this year, and you'll beat Idaho State. Then, in Game 4 in Week 4, if you beat USC on the road at the Coliseum, that will be such a symbolic victory because the Utes have not won there since the motor vehicle was invented.
Yeah.
They haven't won there in 100 years.
Right.
And so if Utah gets a win there, then they'll take on a Washington State team that's probably going to be trying to replace a lot. They are losing a couple of offensive linemen from a year ago. You lose Gardner Minshew, who is a great quarterback. I feel like the Utes could have the better of Washington State, and you're undefeated sitting at 5-0 heading into your bye week with the Beavers waiting for you.
Yep.
It's going to be a good start for the Utes.
Utes are going to have a good start. They also have 2 bye weeks this season, which should help if they get banged up a little bit. You've got the nice 2 weeks off of rest to give yourself an opportunity to get back on the field and get healthy. And there's just not a lot of competition in the South. I mean, I think it's wrong that USA Today doesn't have the Utes in the AP Top 25 or whatever their Top 25 ranking before the season starts.
Their PS Top 25. It's a preseason.
But the fact that nobody else has anybody from the Pac-12 South is probably a good sign, because there's not anybody outside of USC who even has the talent, I don't think, right now to compete with the University of Utah. And they certainly don't have the schedule. Remember last year, Utah had to play Oregon and Stanford. I mean, Utah had to play Washington last year. You drop some of those teams now. You get Oregon State and you get Cal. Not that Cal is awful, but they're not great.
I'll take them over Oregon or Stanford.
Right.
And oddly enough, though, Utah matches up well with Stanford. So that is a bit of an untrue statement in that the Utes don't mind playing Stanford most years. In fact, they have matched up quite well with Stanford. Where they don't match up well is a team like Arizona State or Washington State. These spread teams that require a lot of you in your secondary, because you're going to give up 5 and 10-yard routes to cover the deep ones. And if you give up enough 5 and 10-yard routes play in and play out, you're going to miss one tackle, and then all of a sudden they've put a drive together when really they've had a couple of random completions. But that's always been the Achilles heel for Utah, is these spread teams. But no, you want to line up and just try to out-physical the Utes. They've won the majority of those matchups since being in the conference up until last year when Washington just really they out-muscled Utah. They really bowled them over.
And I guess a lot of it will come down for USC is what does their quarterback situation look like? How does that offense look? Is JT Daniels ready to step up and be the guy? Because JT Daniels wasn't awful last season, but he was a true freshman. He was 59% completion percentage. He was 14 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. It's okay. That's not bad. I mean, there are worse true freshmen that we've seen. If he comes out and is, ready to light the conference on fire and starts the Sam Darnold thing, where remember after Sam Darnold's, his redshirt freshman season, he still had to wait one more year to go to the draft, but the joke was that this is the Darnold draft and everyone's tanking to get Sam Darnold. Now he ended up going 3 overall. He didn't end up going number 1, but still, after his first real season, what would be his second year at USC, and now JT Daniels' second season at USC, can he put himself in that conversation? And certainly he was recruited to have that type of talent.
Yeah, but now JT Daniels has to adjust to a new scheme that doesn't necessarily play to his strengths. Now, the argument against T. Martin, and a year ago what USC was doing was that they were relying too much on JT Daniels' strength. You guys remember, if you just watched USC against Utah, how many times did he throw deep? Hell, the touchdown pass he had in the first quarter to put the Trojans up 14-0. I forget if that was the first score or if the fumble return from Tufele was the first score. But USC scored twice early, and one of them was just a off-the-back foot 40-yard bomb into the end zone from Daniels to Michael Pittman, who's like 6'4" and 220. And that's a play that USC made all year. Amon-Ra St. Brown got behind everybody but Utah. So Utah clearly said, we're going to take away Amon-Ra's deep ball. We're going to force JT Daniels to make some other more difficult throws, and he made them. And so, again, back to what they asked of Daniels a year ago, because he can make such complex, deep throws, they asked him to do it too much. Their margin for error became too thin. They did not focus on the run game. And then USC's defense was injured at times and fell apart as well. And USC was a hot mess that did not want to play for their coach last year. I would be stunned if USC beat Utah in 2019. In fact, I'd basically guarantee you that the Utes will beat that USC team that will be imploding, but also Utah is the better team. It's going to be their first win at the Coliseum in 100 years.
We talked in the last segment about Utah, maybe it was 2 segments ago, Utah regaining momentum after ending the season slowly. And Utah loses to Washington in the Pac-12 championship game and then lost to Northwestern in the bowl game, and it felt like, okay, things are slowing down. And then you got the recruiting class coming back, the 4 kids, I should say, coming back for their senior seasons. Then you had a nice recruiting class, and you hired Andy Ludwig, and you got Cam Rising to commit, and you had a good spring, and then you had a great draft, and Utah certainly picked that momentum up again to look like the best team in the South. Has USC done anything since closing the season 1-3, where their only win was Oregon State? They lost to the Utes, they lost to Cal, they lost to UCLA, and they lost to Notre Dame. Have they done anything this offseason that makes you feel like they've regained any momentum? Even going down to what was an okay recruiting class, but remember Brew McCoy signed? He was the top recruit in the country, and then one day later put his name in the transfer portal and went to Texas?
Well, no, it was even worse than that. It was like he was on campus for 3 weeks and then transferred. So he really saw the behind the scenes there. They also had other guys on campus and other previous high-level recruits transfer away. But
the Cliff Kingsbury nonsense.
There's always going to be
happy to join Coach Houghton.
There's always going to be a number of 5-star guys that are ready to line up and play for USC. But then you get this Cliff Kingsbury situation going that I'm not even sure that was even a failure for USC.
Happy to join Coach Houghton.
They hired Cliff Kingsbury, and then he took an NFL head coaching job. Where's the harm in that? The harm is that USC tried to cover it up, act like it didn't happen, tried to hide from it, and act like, no, we're not owned. We didn't just get owned. Well, yeah, you did, but also you sent a coach to the NFL, which needed to be your rallying cry.
That pisses me off.
Yeah, congrats, USC fans. We had him, but then the NFL hired him, so I guess we're doing something right. But
kudos to him.
Somehow they turned that into a failure. So there's not a lot that makes sense for USC right now, which is a big part of why I think Utah's on the right track to not only win the South, but win the entire Pac-12. Utah's going to have 8 draftable players on this team next year. Oregon's going to be all about Justin Herbert, which they were this year, and the Utes won that game. Arizona's going to be all about Khalil Tate, and he was injured before the season started last year. Colorado's going to be all about Laviska Shenault. Can Utah stop him? No. No one's going to stop him. But you're going to beat Colorado because look at the game a year ago. Steven Montez is a good quarterback. He's not a great quarterback, and the Utes are a better team there. Arizona State and UCLA are the question marks. I think UCLA is going to be an improved team, and I think Arizona State's going to have the talent to keep it close. Other than that, Utah is by far the best team in the South.
Then the North gets interesting. The North is going to be interesting in the Pac-12 because we'll have to look at what this Washington team looks like now without Myles Gaskin and without Jake Browning. Now, they might be getting a better quarterback in Jacob Eason ready to step up and play, and that wouldn't be terribly surprising. As our guy, what's his name, up in Washington?
Softy told us that Jake Browning is getting worse.
I think he's gotten worse. And he had an insane sophomore season. He had, 34 touchdowns and 5 interceptions or whatever the bizarre number was.
And I'm sorry he didn't follow that up with better numbers every year.
He did
I think he's gotten worse.
But he did get worse. That's the problem. He did get worse.
Statistically, he did.
Only where it counts.
I think he's gotten worse.
Washington won a lot of games here. You and Softy, I know you guys are twins. You're not wrong. But Washington won a lot of games.
Absolutely.
I think he's gotten worse.
Okay, this is not Wazoo.
He also made the national championship game as a sophomore.
In fact, who had better stats? Washington State. Who was more fun to watch? Gardner Minshew.
Sure.
And who won the Apple Cup?
I honestly don't remember.
Jake Browning and
Washington. Okay, honestly, I didn't remember.
Well, and that's what got them into the championship game because Wazoo would have gotten into it if they won.
It was also a blizzard. Remember that?
Yeah, but what happens when the crap hits the fan?
Yeah, you
got to run the ball.
Yeah.
And Wazoo couldn't do that.
That's not on Jake Browning either. Jake Browning didn't win you that game.
No,
Myles Gaskin won the game.
Yeah, but I'm saying that
I think it's gotten worse.
That conservative style that you play with.
Thank you, Softy.
Which allows you to go, 4x4 mode, but also economy mode, which you can do there at Washington State.
Okay, well, that didn't go well.
Washington's getting 25 miles to the gallon.
Washington has the combination to do 4x4 and performance mode. Washington State is a Prius.
So, is that a dig or a jab?
What happens when it gets cloudy out? You run out of juice, baby.
Those aren't solar powered.
What?
Priuses aren't solar powered. It has nothing to do with the clouds.
They are electric cars. So when the clouds are out.
I hope you feel better accommodated next time.
I swear. If you would just listen to your self-talk at some points, you'd realize how dumb you actually sound. You're questioning where electricity comes from. I flippin' don't know where it comes from because I don't drive a Prius. Because I got hair on my chest, and I have kissed a woman before on the mouth. So no.
Well, my.
I kissed 3 women in my lifetime, 3 different women.
It's impressive. Mom, Red's mom,
and your mother.
Looking at the North though, what's your bet? Who's going to be the top team? Because everybody right now is saying Oregon.
It's Washington, and I know Oregon's the sexy pick. Penei Sewell should win the Heisman.
Yep.
Penei Sewell is going to be a top 10 pick. He's a great left tackle there, and I think Justin Herbert's going to be a top 10 pick as well, but I think Washington is the more complete team, and Chris Peterson has just done it year in and year out. I think Eason is a better NFL prospect than Jake Browning. But, yeah, even though you got to replace Myles Gaskin, you'll find a way to get some of that production back. I think Washington's still going to be good on defense.
Yeah, Myles Gaskin's great. He did something we've never seen in the Pac-12, which is 4 consecutive 1,000-yard rushing performances for the season. 1,000-yard rushers aren't exactly impossible to find. Now it's
4 of them in a row.
4 in a row is insane. But, yeah, finding one next year, I think Washington could do it. Let's go to the phone lines, 877-353-0700. Dave's on the phone. What's going on, Dave?
What's up, Dave?
Hey, just a observation over the last couple of years. Last year, I'm talking to a couple scouts that were at practices and whatnot. There was a general consensus that last year's roster had about 25 potential NFL athletes on the team. When you look at that, that's like a fourth of the roster on last year's roster that had NFL potential. And as you go through the Pac-12, you look at the rosters outside of Washington and Oregon, there's not a roster in the Pac-12 or in the West, period, that has that much potential. And when you look at the schedule, when you look at the losses, it's all hinged on quarterback play and receiver play. And, this year is what's going to define the program for the future at Utah. The Utah's proven that they can put the defensive backs in the NFL. They're starting to become more proficient in the linebackers, O-line, but yet we've yet to have a receiver drafted. Haven't had a quarterback drafted for a long time. And until we get that quarterback play and that receiver play that is slightly better than middle of the Pac-12, that's where Utah's going to remain because with those two positions, that's what puts points on the board. And you look at all the losses that Utah's had, a couple blowouts like the bowl game, and even that hinges on quarter play and points on the board.
Dave, we appreciate the call. Thanks for giving us a call. You can always call us 877-353-0700.
Dave is right on there, and he's talking about a culture that Utah needs to cultivate all over the field and not just defensively there. But to start his call, did Dave say that he was talking to some scouts? Dave's hitting the streets there?
He's got a part-time job as an NFL scout.
Did he say? Did he mean NFL scouts or guys from like Scout.com?
The kids
or Boy Scouts?
Yeah, Boy Scouts.
Talking to some Cub Scouts, because when you look at last year's roster, they just had 5 guys drafted, and this year's roster I think has at least 8 more guys on it. What's that math? You're talking about a total roster of guys who have NFL futures. Yeah, around 20
plus
players.
Plus 4 guys signed UFA deals. Yeah.
So what is that? 9 from a year ago? I bet you're more like 14 total next year to 13. You could really have an elite number of guys signed potentially. Maybe it's more closer to, I think 11 could be the tops next year. So if we're talking about 9 and 11, maybe that's 20 total guys on this roster, which is huge. And Utah's got the NFL talent to continue to grow this reputation. But it's not an accident now. You think Kyle Whittingham did it 20 times on this roster alone on accident? No, he knows how to find NFL talent, and he's having success with more guys like, well, he didn't find Manny Bowen, for example. He fell in his lap, but that might be one of them. They found Bradley and I. They found Zach Moss. Zach Moss looks like an NFL running back. They found Jordan Wilmore.
Wrestled down by Manny Bowen.
They found Jordan Wilmore this year. He's got man arms. He's got that NFL body. It's not an accident. The big question mark. Wait, was that a drop or did somebody?
Yeah, or is JP clicking on? Are you using Windows back there? Huh?
Are you on the computer?
I'm worried about the size.
Okay, JP's using Windows back there.
The size of your window or your computer or what are you doing there, man? Darren. JP's day drunk. Darren Paulo's an NFL player.
Going to the can.
Bama Dele Olaseni is 6'8" and 340. So if he's got half a season going, he can play in the NFL at that size. And I'm just talking about in the immediate future. Cole Fotheringham could test the NFL waters. Obviously, Zach Moss can. Huntley's a big question mark because I would have said he's too small, and I have said that. And Kyler Murray just got drafted number 1 overall, and he's about the same size.
Yeah, I just don't know if Tyler Huntley's a good enough runner or a good enough passer, and he doesn't have the size. That's the problem. Kyler Murray's both.
What y'all got to say about my receivers now? I got to say about my receivers now. What y'all got to say about the offense now, huh? Let me hear.
You're going to upset him.
I might, but Kyler Murray doesn't have the size, and even then he's like at the very bottom end of the window to make the NFL.
But he's got an incredible arm.
He's got an insane arm, and he was the best runner in football last year.
And he's a top 5 pick in baseball as well. I'm sure Tyler Huntley, I bet he wouldn't strike out too much.
We've got a pair of tickets for you to go check out the Utah Royals taking on Chicago this Friday. Give us a call right now, 877-353-0700, 877-353-0700. Third caller through. Get a pair of tickets this Friday. Check out the Royals taking on Chicago.
I don't think we've ever heard Huntley talk about another sport that he's in love with.
He was a baseball player.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't kidding about that.
Right, he was a baseball player.
I bet he could sling it.
Yeah.
Pitcher or something?
I thought we knew he was a baseball player coming out of Florida.
Really?
A lot of those Florida kids play baseball.
I don't remember him talking about
Florida's
basketball
big. You can play
or anything.
year-round. Yeah, baseball's great.
He can't baseball slide.
No, he doesn't baseball slide. He Pete Roses it. He tries to go through the catcher at home plate.
I don't think Tyler Huntley understands what that word means, slide.
If you hit home runs, you don't have to slide. When we come back, we'll talk about the NBA playoffs, the games last night, what we saw from the Nuggets and the Blazers. We'll talk about the big games tonight. Gunther and Ben, Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700. Gunther and Ben, ESPN 700, 331. Kyle Gunther, Ben Anderson. A very happy Tuesday. A little rainy, but looks like it's clearing up.
How surprised were you at the way Portland started that game last night against a Denver team that, yeah, they ended up coming out on top, but I was more surprised by Denver's defense. I mean, did they make Portland look out of sorts or what?
What happened in the first round with Oklahoma City was surprising to me. With Portland. I did not think Portland was going to win that series because I didn't have a ton of faith in Portland and their team design. And as Gordy Chiesa, who joins us every Thursday, has said, they've got a major fault that's court tilt. They're very heavy in their talent in one spot on the floor, which is, Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum's ability to step back and spread the floor. Now, apparently, OKC had no idea what to do about that because they just let Dame go off and C.J. McCollum went off. And even without Yusuf Nurkic, who broke his leg in that horrific fashion late in the season, they just did not have an ability to stop what Portland was doing. And also, Portland was able, with Enes Kanter, to go out and slow down Steven Adams, which shouldn't have been the case because Enes Kanter's not a good defensive player. And we saw that last night. How did we see that last night? Well, Yusuf Nurkic went off for, 37? Or I should say Nikola Jokic.
Yeah, he
went off for 37 last night.
Now, Enes Kanter was not bad either. I mean, Enes Kanter and D-Lil combined gave you 65 points. Right. So that was the other troubling thing if you're a Portland fan, was that D-Lil was great. There were times where I thought C.J. McCollum was a little too trigger-happy. He pulls up from deep, and I swear, it's like you need to stop watching D-Lil's highlight tape.
And, he was red hot in the first quarter, and then he just thought he was going to stay hot the rest of the game.
And he obviously fizzled out a little bit there. But some of those deep threes are they're troubling because they're lower percentage shots for a reason, even though D-Lil says he practices them. Did you see that Rodney Hood sighting? Old Robin Hood. Rodney Hood shows up like a sharpshooter and even gives Portland something off the bench. And they can't keep up with a Denver team that everybody just keeps saying not to expect this much from Jamal Murray, and then he keeps delivering. Jokic moves weird.
He's awkward.
He moves incorrectly.
Yeah.
We talk about this with James Harden somewhat, but James is a very quick young man, and he's 6'5". Jokic looks like he's 8'5". He looks like he's not moving, and then he just tosses up this weird shot. It goes in from 30 feet out, and you're just trying to figure out how to guard this mammoth.
He's Ostertag with an insane skill set. I mean, he moves like Otag did. He's got the same body. He's a little less doughy, but not a whole lot less doughy. He's got a little better footwork, but even then, he falls down a lot.
He's got enough dough to make you a nice deep dish pizza from Chicago.
But Enes Kanter is living up to the old adage that we see a lot, which is, scores 20, gives up 30. And he did exactly that last night. Last night, Enes Kanter, 11 to 14 from the floor. You love it. 26 points. You love it. That's great offensive production. Nikola Jokic, the other starting center for the Denver Nuggets, put up 37 points on 11 of 18 shooting and got to the free throw line 12 times where he knocked down all 12. This is where Enes Kanter becomes an issue. And it wasn't as big an issue in the first round because Steven Adams just tried to bully him and tried to go around him. And Enes Kanter can stay between you and the basket, and Steven Adams didn't kill them on the pick and roll. And then we mentioned that the problem with Nikola Jokic isn't him as a roller. It's him as starting the pick and roll. It's him as the ball handler. And Jamal Murray starting the pick and roll, because then what happens? Well, you switch, and Enes Kanter either gets stuck in no man's land between Nikola Jokic or has to slide around a pick to stay with Jokic, or he ends up on Jamal Murray, and Jamal Murray's going to torch him. So Enes is playing well. Enes has put him in a spot to get himself a big, nice contract again and stay in the NBA for another 4 years. But you're seeing the issue of trying to play him late in some of these games.
Yeah, and I guess I feel for D-Lil because the pressure's on them now to even this series, and I feel like they will. At this point now, did anybody think Philly was going to go down 0-2 last night? No way. James Butler stepped up, which apparently that's Jimmy's alter ego, even though Jimmy said, no, my name is Jimmy, don't call me James.
That's what Brett Brown thinks.
Brett Brown told the media that James Butler showed up. That was a mature performance, and Jimmy reminded everyone that his name is, in fact, Jimmy.
Jimmy's the type of guy who would leave a town because of that.
Well, and also Jimmy is apparently a millennial because he used the word that every millennial has to use to prove that they think they're smart, and that is the word literally. Because Jimmy Butler said, my name's not James, though. It's literally Jimmy. Keep an eye out for that. Every millennial.
It's not the wrong way to use it. It's okay.
Sure.
He used it correctly.
Yeah, he did use it actually right, which is good.
That word is
he literally used it right.
Is literally overused by every person under 30 on Earth, and they think we can't tell what they're saying, but we literally can tell that they've literally said that word 3 times, and it makes me want to vomit. It makes me want to puke.
But he nailed it.
Okay, he did. Either way, though, I feel like Portland's going to bounce back in Game 2, and they're going to tie this series. So I don't want to overreact there because also Jokic was not this sensational against San Antonio 3 different times. You saw Jokic struggle. Why? Because of L.A. LaMarcus Aldridge was causing him some issues. Portland does not have that. As you were just talking about, Enes Kanter is more like Enes the Menace defensively, and he's got a bad shoulder, and I'm not going to invest in that matchup if I'm a Portland fan from here on out. But then, yeah, what's it going to be? Denver going up against Golden State? Denver going up against Houston?
Most likely.
Well, and what's Houston going to do? I guess Golden State will put Draymond Green on him at times, but he's the size of Kevin Durant.
Jokic has torched Draymond Green in the past because, yeah, you just can't do it. Now,
so who does Houston put on him then? PJ Tucker?
Probably have to
Or
put Clint
Capella?
Capella, and then he can move with his feet a little bit. Nene can move his feet a little bit. But look, Jokic is a top 10 player in the NBA. I mean, he's a top 15 guy. He's right in that conversation.
Made the All-Star team.
He's 7'2". He's going to be probably the All-NBA second-team center. It's probably going to be Embiid 1. It's going to be Jokic 2, and probably be Rudy 3rd. But there's a reason 7-footers matter in the NBA. We've gotten so in love with this idea that you have to shoot the 3, and it's better to have a small guy who shoots the 3 that plays the 5 than a big guy. Well, no, what happened was the NBA just got bigger, and now Jokic is 7 feet tall and shoots the 3. And Joel Embiid's 7 feet tall and shoots the 3. And Boogie Cousins is 7 feet tall and shoots the 3. The league was going to get longer, but it was also going to get bigger. The idea that the league was going to trend small was goofy, and I don't know why anyone thought that was the case. The small ball doesn't exist. It's the long ball. And that's what we're starting to see now in the playoffs because you need to have a 7-footer. And guess what happens? When you don't have a 7-footer to go up against Jokic, you're going to lose in 5 games. And that might happen to Denver. We'll see if that ends up happening. Who can stop him? Well, Rudy Gobert can. Why? Because he's also 7 feet tall. You do still need to have those big guys when those talented big guys exist in the NBA. And right now, we're getting a growing number of them. And DeAndre Ayton's going to be in that conversation soon. We're going to continue to see players like Jokic, players like Joel Embiid prop up over the next 10 years. There'll be 2 or 3 more guys like that. And they'll get back to a point where they're not dominating the NBA, but they're winning playoff series.
The only way I know how to stop Jokic is talcum powder. That's how you stop that where I'm from. I would have loved to have seen Rudy Gobert in that matchup. We obviously did not. And now the question is, will the Jazz feel that pressure to add to their roster? It's not what will they add to their roster because there have been plenty of times. There's been 2 or 3 other times in this post-D-Will era where the Jazz have just completely stood pat. At one point, they got Alec Burks back healthy and Dennis Lindsey, maybe that was Kevin O'Connor, but it was essentially the same message. He said, yeah, our biggest free agent is getting Alec Burks back.
Yeah.
And they're probably going to use that line with Dante Exum next year, I'm sure. They brought Favors back this year when no one thought they would. So it's not a guarantee that the Jazz decide to make a change to this roster because you can talk yourself into that series being a Donovan Mitchell shot away from having that series tied 2-2 with Houston. And that is the case. However, don't forget that shot in Game 2 was to tie it, y'all.
Right. And here's the other problem, I guess, with the offseason and what you got to be concerned about. And the news is coming out today. Real GM just posted about it. That Real GM this offseason, their 2 top targets, and they've got room for 2 max free agents, is Kemba Walker and Chris Middleton. Okay, well, both those guys are all-stars. So if you've got Kristaps Porzingis, and you have the Rookie of the Year in Luka Doncic, and then you had 2 more all-stars, so basically you have 4 all-stars on that lineup, it doesn't matter what happens to Kevin Durant. It doesn't matter if he goes to New York. It doesn't matter if Kyrie Irving goes there. You've got another team in the West that you're competing with that has 4 all-stars and is 24 years old on average age. And it's going to be that way for the next 5 years. So that's where going back, the Jazz not jumping up and grabbing a guy like Mike Conley can come back to hurt you because other teams this offseason, just like the Jazz did, lined up their contracts to expire to have $30 million to give all these star players. Now,
and so did the Jazz. The Jazz have their contracts lined up, and they can move on from Rubio and Favors and create $30 million worth of room. So you have to spend this money, too. It's not like we're asking the Jazz to take money out of their pocket. No, this is a part of your salary structure, and the Jazz have $30 million to spend. So you can't have this narrative be out there and, we're just strapped for cash right now. No, you got $30 million. At least you got 15.
But that's really the case for the Jazz. I know a lot of people have been waiting for Chris Paul to age himself out of being a contender and Golden State to break itself up, and it's going to happen. I think the Jazz waited for that as well. I think the Jazz thought maybe it's not smart to spend money to have $90 million going to one player for 3 years to go up against Kevin Durant while he's in Golden State. And I understand that, and I think there's logic to that. The problem is, have you guaranteed yourself a spot at the table after those guys break up when everybody else had that same plan, which was when those guys break up, that's when we're going to spend our money. And that's what Dallas is doing. That's what the Clippers are doing. That's what the Lakers are going to do this offseason. Are the Jazz able to put themselves in that conversation? And that falls on the shoulders of Dennis Lindsey and the Jazz front office this offseason to say, look, we have a good enough pitch to go out and get the next player, whether that's Kemba or whether that's Malcolm Brogdon or whoever it is that's going to come in and join the Jazz. They need to make sure that they've set themselves up to have that pitch, and they've got to have some cards up their sleeve coming up on July 1st to be appealing, to be more compelling than Dallas, to be more compelling than sticking with your old team.
Well, and you also don't want to waste 2 more years with Donovan Mitchell in his prime and have him sit around and wait for guys to develop and wait for Ricky Rubio to figure out his shot. You don't want that to wear on the young fella. So the Jazz have a window here over the next 5 seasons or so with Donovan Mitchell to really capitalize on it, and the time is nigh. The time is nigh.
We've been waiting on that for a while because JP said the end is nigh during the break.
Yeah, the time is nigh, which means the time is now. The apocalypse is coming. The Sultan of Brunei is here. That's what the end is nigh. I looked it up. I know what it means now. It's a play thing. It's like an actor thing. But the time is nigh for the Jazz. That's
literally the best use of nigh I've ever heard.
Yeah. On sports radio. No doubt about it.
Ain't no denying it, player.
When we come back,
arithmetic.
Football at 50. It's Gunther and Ben, Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700. Gunther and Ben, ESPN 700. Kyle Gunther, Ben Anderson. You've been watching Jeopardy?
Yeah, did you hear? They are no longer allowing folks to wager $69 on a question.
Not, that's not where I was going, but okay.
Well, that is the new rule.
I don't think it's a new rule. I think it's been an existing rule
for
a while. James Holhauser, NBA doesn't let you pick that number either. James Holhauser, historic run on Jeopardy, is alive and well.
Yeah, he's made like $1 million. What is it, 1.2?
Holhauser is a professional sports bettor from Las Vegas. He's won 18 straight appearances on Jeopardy. Last night, he won by, I think it was $18 or $16.
Yeah, and then the third place gal, she was at like $7,000.
She wasn't great. She didn't do great. He won by $18. He ended up with $54,017 to get the victory. A sports information director from Massachusetts was actually the loser. It's the highest loss ever, highest total for a loss ever in Jeopardy history. He had $53,999 when he ended up winning on the final answer of Chamber of Commerce. I don't know what the question was or what the answer was, but Chamber of Commerce was the question.
Question was, where all that commerce going on
What
at?
is Chamber of Commerce?
Where all that? The answer is this is where all the commerce happens. And then the question is, what is the Chamber of Commerce?
This guy has won $1.329 million. He is still behind Ken Jennings, the local boy. Ken Jennings won $2.5 million. Now, Ken Jennings won $2.5 million over 74 games. This guy's more than halfway there in 18 games because he likes the big money.
He's prolific.
He's got the top 9, I believe, highest grossing performances in Jeopardy history already.
And good for him. So how does this work then? If you make it through to the end, you don't lose it all, right?
Nope.
No,
he takes all this home.
He's going to keep at least this much, so he keeps going. It's not like Deal or No Deal or remember Who Wants to Be a Millionaire?
Yeah.
You can walk away with $250,000 right now. I keep going for the million. That show was great, too. I miss game shows because they only existed in an era where you had to be in front of your television anyways, because now no one's going to sit around on Netflix and watch Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.
It's always like a talent show now. Yeah, but it's hard to dial up anticipation for the game show.
Well, but when we're all sitting around Sunday night, you're watching this thing anyways, there was a market for that. I have bad news for you, if you're ready for it, and that is that ESPN, the magazine, will soon cease to exist.
I saw they were canceling it.
It's shutting down after 21 years. ESPN, the magazine, was a big part of my childhood. I used to love reading it.
I'm a subscriber. Because you get it when you get ESPN's Insider for their website, and you have to just get some of the articles, and it's certainly nice to have. But yeah, they used to send me the magazine, and they just stopped one day, and I realized this morning as I read that the article that they were ending it. I thought, I haven't gotten that in a long time. And I realized, I must not care about it.
I remember very clearly.
I didn't realize I stopped getting it.
Reading about Julius Peppers at North Carolina when I was 14 or 15 years old and thinking, you better be careful to all this talk about wanting to play college football. Because if you play college football, you're going to have to go against a monster like that. And hearing about Julius Peppers, he benched 400 pounds without ever working out. He would lie to the coaches at North Carolina and tell them that he was sweaty, but he would just dump water all over himself and not lift. He said that his diet was potato chips and Red Bulls. When I read that, I realized, he might have different gifts. He might have different
genetic sequencing.
Genetic sequencing versus what I have.
Yeah.
I also very clearly remember the White Boy article with Jason Williams. He got White Boy tattooed across his knuckles because he was white chocolate. And the headline was, the person at the tattoo shop told me not to do it. But I did it anyways.
$1.5 million over 18 performances is great. $1.5 million is a lot to have. He's a professional gambler, though. Like, you get, 200th place at the main table for the World Series of Poker, and I think you make more than $1.5 million. This is not like an insane amount of money for this guy. It's a lot for most people. Compared to a professional athlete, $1.5 million in law. It's a ton for your average Joe. This guy isn't your average Joe, though, because he's playing with this money fast and loose like he's a gambler.
Yeah, but there's not a lot of real functional need for this type of knowledge. Unless you are a shut-in who watches Jeopardy all day, or you are my grandma who likes to just be right about everything and say, what do you mean the Chamber of Commerce? You don't know how many people are in the Chamber of Commerce? I don't know. How many senators are there? I don't know. Do I need to know how many congressmen there are to go about my day? What's that got to do with the price of eggs? Trebek, snarkiest host in all the land.
Well, he's dying, so let's give him a pass.
Still doesn't mean that he's exempt from being called snarky. Everybody dies. He's snarky.
When we come back,
I've long had a beef with Trebek because he always
you don't
acts
need to
like
anymore.
He always acts like he has the answers. Like he acts like he knew the answer as he reads it off. I never liked that about Trebek.
Dan Sorensen from Ute Zone joins us next. Gunther and Ben, Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 7.